Can I first of all thank Piers for the opportunity to come and just say something in support of the conference today. First of all, I am not a scientist, as I am frequently reminded when my critics refer to some of the views which I have expressed. But of course, neither are most of them. But that doesn't seem to stop them spouting the information which they wish to in support of their global warming points of view. I suppose my qualification for being here is that, first of all, I have been branded by The Guardian, along with David Bellamy, who I think is now gone, but as one of the 10 most dangerous climate change deniers in the world. I'm glad to have that title given to me. And for the last 2 years, the Green Party in Northern Ireland have awarded me the Green Wash Award for being the most unfriendly environmental minister, I think, in the Western Hemisphere. Ironically, the award, and I have it proudly sitting on my desk, is a plastic globe, which I pointed out to them wasn't very biodegradable, and therefore didn't really meet their green credentials. But I just want to say something about the politics of of climate change, because the one thing I have found when, as the Environment Minister in Northern Ireland, I was not prepared to espouse all of the mythology which goes around the climate change industry, was that the attacks that came were not based on the science, were not based on the evidence, they simply became personal attacks. You're a nutcase, you're a flat earther, you're a heretic, and all of the other, but no one actually engaged in the debate about climate change. In fact, I had a very interesting experience, because when it came to the committee in the Northern Ireland Assembly who passed a vote of no confidence in me, I think the only minister in Northern Ireland, and you think of all the ministers we have in Northern Ireland who they could pass a vote of no confidence in, I was the only minister who's ever had a vote of no confidence passed in them, and I was hauled before the Environment Committee. And of course, as you do, the civil servants said to me, "Now, Minister, how are you going to approach this?" I said, "I'm going in here to have a go at them." And I said, "Well, do you think this is the wisest thing in the world? Maybe you should just try and placate them." I said, "Don't you worry, I've got it all sorted." So in we went, and the chairman who was sitting there said that I was a disgrace. The committee thought I was a disgrace. Instead of giving leadership, I was encouraging people to be profligate with energy, etc., etc., etc. And did I realise that future generations would look back on people like myself and say, how would such dinosaurs ever lead us into the catastrophes that we have experienced, etc., etc. So he went on, I said, well, and he said, so you'll understand why we've passed a vote of no confidence in you. No leadership, and we expected that from the minister. So I said, and this really epitomises, I suppose, the whole part of the climate change debate. I said, well, I think if that's the case, Chairman, you'd better join me in this vote of no confidence. Because let's look at the leadership you have given. And I got out his travel expense. And he had claimed for 56,000 miles of constituency business. He had circumnavigated the globe on 2 occasions in the space of 1 year. I also found out that he drove a 3-litre car, so it worked out his carbon footprint from it. And it was 20 tonnes, if you want to know, of carbon. And he told me that he couldn't use public transport because it was too inconvenient. Not that it stopped, of course, politicians pontificating that the public should use public transport, but that they were somehow exempt from it. I think an example of the kind of hypocrisy that sometimes emanates from this. And of course, that's, I think, and I take great heart from the reaction which I have got from the general public. Because whilst the media have been pillar. I mean, I loved some of the headlines I got. Though the best headline I got, I mean, this went all around the world apparently. I was oblivious to most of it, but people sent me it. And one of the papers in Italia, in Italy, had a big headline, Viva Sammy Wilson. I also got support from the Pope on this, but I thought, being a member of the Democratic Unionist Party, I better keep that quiet. but anyhow, you know, despite all of that, when you look at the record of those who pontificate, and we had Prime Minister's questions today in the House of Commons, we had at least 5 members jumping up, asking questions about the 50 days we've got left to save the world, etc., before Copenhagen. There's a hysteria building up about this. But yet, against that hysteria, one looks at the policies which are being followed, because of course no politician who believes that really has the courage to tell people the real implications of, if they believe what they say, that somehow or other we've got a big knob called CO2, which we can turn like the temperature gauge on a cooker and turn the world's temperature up and down. So if we want to cool the earth down, we've got to turn this knob round. And here's what it means to you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and everybody else. You're going to have to eat less meat. You're going to have to travel in your car less. You'll not be able to afford, and you'll not be allowed to fly around the world and go on your holidays. You're going to pay 60% more for your electricity. And if you then take the real extremists, like James Lovelock, we're going to have to, the changes in lifestyle are going to be so dramatic, we're going to have to suspend democracy. Because we couldn't possibly get these changes through in our democracy. Or the chief scientist for the Mr. King for the government, who said we'll have to get the United Kingdom's population down to 30 million. I don't know what he's going to do, but but I mean, all of this. I mean, these are the kinds of things which, of course, no politician, while they talk about CO2 and reducing CO2 and the impact of reducing CO2, will not spell out for the general public, because they know that they will become totally unelectable. And that, of course, is the contradiction. On one hand, we can have a government that says aviation emissions are a major cause of global warming, and yet propose a third runway at Heathrow. Yes. On one hand, we can get, and we have this in Northern Ireland. In fact, one of my greatest critics is a neighbour of mine who is also elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly, and who talks about the evils of global warming on a regular basis, and of course ignores the fact that 20% of the greenhouse gases generated in Northern Ireland come from agriculture, where agriculture, of course, is much more important. But I look across the valley to his house, and he has got flatulent cows running all around the field. Doesn't seem to see any contradiction in it. But I think that the public are coming to recognise those contradictions. That is why 63% of the public believe that most of this is driven by the government's need to generate additional tax revenue. It is also why more and more people are beginning to believe that it is okay to question the orthodoxy. It is also why the government is now resorting to publishing scary fairy tales to try and frighten the lives out of youngsters so that their parents will change their particular lifestyle. And I think that as these contradictions become more and more apparent, then that is why you get the hysteria.